Welcome to the April 28, 2011 meeting of the Board of Education for Prince George's County. Before we begin, please turn off your wireless communications as they tend to interfere with the taping of the meeting. Ms. Eubanks, can you lead us in the board prayer and pledge of allegiance, please?
O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies. Being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Eubanks. Mrs. Thompson, call the roll, please.
Mr. Armwood?
Present.
Ms. Boston?
Present.
Mr. Barrows?
Present.
Ms. Eubanks?
Present.
Ms. Higgins?
Present.
Ms. Johnson? Ms. Waller? Mr. Harris?
Present.
Mrs. Beck?
Present.
Mrs. Jacobs?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, prior to adoption of today's agenda, please note the following changes. Item 10.3, revised board policy 0107, 0107.1, and 0109. Item number 10.4, revised board policy 0108, and item 10.5, revised board policy 8251 have been deleted from the agenda. Item number 10.7, consideration for conversion of Paint Branch Elementary School to a pre-K complex has been added to the agenda under new business first readers. And the chair recognizes Dr. Height.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I request that we also pull item 7.4, approval of facility use agreement for Imagine Foundation 2 Public Charter School at Morningside.
Mr. Burrows, you have an agenda item recommendation?
I'll wait to item 4.1.
4.1. You mean you'll wait until we get to that item? Okay. Yes. Okay, no problem. Okay, so colleagues, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you, Ms. Boston. It's been, Ms. Eubanks. It's been properly moved and second that the board adopts the agenda as amended. Discussion? Not yet. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Armwood. All in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none.
Yeah.
Mr. Burrows.
Madam Chair, I would like to move, we have 10 students speaking today, and I would like to move, is this what you're calling for?
Let me remind myself what we just did. We have a motion on the floor. I didn't call, did we do the, yeah, we did the motion. I'm just trying to remember if I had called the roll yet. Did I call the roll? Okay, we're fine. Mr. Burrows.
Madam Chair, we have 10 students on the docket today to speak about a One Less campaign of student bullying campaign that started at Oxon Hill High School. I would greatly appreciate the board's mercy in allowing the students to speak during item 4.1 instead of item 11.1. Our meetings run sometimes past midnight, and I would hate to have these students to stay through all that. So with that, Madam Chair, I move to allow the students to speak with item 4.1.
Okay,
Second.
It's been the motion on the floor then is to suspend the rules with regard to board policy. It's been properly moved in second by Mr. Harris. Any discussion? Ms. Higgins?
Yes, I would like to make a friendly amendment that it include all the people who are on the list for non-agenda items and not just the students.
Do you accept that friendly amendment, Mr. Burrows?
No, I don't.
Okay. Any further discussion? He did not accept. Okay. She said friendly. She didn't ask for a new one. Okay. No. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Ms. Thompson, call the roll, please.
Mr. Armwood,
Aye.
Ms. Boston,
Aye.
Mr. Barrows,
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks,
Aye.
Ms. Higgins,
No.
Ms. Johnson, Ms. Waller,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mrs. Beck,
No.
Mrs. Jacobs.
No.
Motion carries.
Okay. All right. So that means that what we will do for item 3.4.1, we will have students speak before speakers on the agenda or non-agenda. Currently, we have, let me pull my list here. Got it. Thank you. Okay. For public comment, the guidelines for registered speakers. In accordance with the motion that was just passed, you have been registered to speak in a public comment forum where the Board of Education will listen to your comments. We will not necessarily address your comments except to the extent that we direct the superintendent to follow up with what you have noted. All registered speakers have 3 minutes to make your presentation. At the sound of the buzzer, please complete the sentence that you are on only. You may not relinquish any part of your speaking time to another registered or unregistered individual. Speakers may address individuals or issues. Please do not use profanity or derogatory terms. If you continue your comments, the buzzer will go off if you have continued past completing the sentence that you're on. Speakers are encouraged to use titles rather than names, for example, principal, superintendent, assistant superintendent, board member, etc. If you have a copy of your comments that you would like to leave for the board, please feel free to do so. Mr. Coleman is there to accept those. First person on the agenda is Jacob Cogman, 11th grade student, Oxon Hill High School.
It's Jacob Cogman, and I'm a junior at Oxon Hill High School. This year, I have the privilege of serving the students of Prince George's County as the PGCPS First Vice President, and to serve the students of Maryland as the Maryland Association of Student Councils, one of the Southern Division Liaisons. I'm here today to speak about the responses and feedback of these organizations to the Oxon Hill High School One Less Bully, One More Friend campaign. In December of 2010, the General Assembly of PGCPS met at Dr. Henry A. Wise Jr. High School. Some representatives from Oxon Hill made a formal presentation to the Assembly. One Less Bully, One More Friend impressed a number of the delegates in attendance, and at this meeting, the Assembly voted in favor on the motion to support the One Less Bully, One More Friend campaign. In March, when we traveled to the MASC convention, delegates from around the state were impressed by the accomplishments of our student government, particularly One Less Bully, One More Friend. They were humbled, inspired, and impressed that a group of students took the extra step and went the extra mile to prevent an issue that is talked about but rarely prevented, and they admired the campaign because we were taking a stand against an issue that isn't widely dealt with at the high school level. Recently, I was on the phone with my friend, the Frederick County SMOB-elect. When I was telling him about the campaign, he told me that he recognized it from the Fox 5 News and said, "It sounded like a program I'd want to get behind." The responses from these bodies of students let me know that the One Less Bully, One More Friend campaign was making an impact bigger than what any of us could have imagined and touching youth of all faiths, colors, and creeds. As I begin to close, I'd like to leave you with this. 3 men are walking down the street and see a piece of trash. The first man passes by and asks, "Why is the trash on the street?" As the second man passes by, he throws another piece of trash on the street and says, "Well, there's already trash on the street. I'm not hurting anyone by adding to it." But the third man stopped, picked up all the trash on the street with the mindset of, "I know it may not seem like much, but I know I'd much rather be a part of the solution as opposed to being part of the problem." Ladies and gentlemen of the board, the street represents the youth of today, and the pieces of trash represent the issue of bullying and the number of problems born from it, i.e. low self-esteem, suicide, and many forms of harassment. Growing up, we were all taught the cliche, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Rather than having the attitude of the first or second man, Oxnell High School took a stand against bullying and began working to clean up the messes that it left behind. Even though outside forces are trying to make our labor in vain, I'm here to let you know that we are troubled but not in distress, perplexed but not in despair, persecuted but not forsaken, cast down but not destroyed. Student leaders, not just here in Prince George's County, but around the state, have all responded with the unified belief that this is something bigger than all of us. Please stand with us and help us combat something bigger than you or I. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cogman. James Cogman?
Hello. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education. My name is James Cogman, and I am currently a junior enrolled at Oxnell High School. I currently serve as one of the 2 MASC Southern Divisional Liaisons and a PGRAS Gold Mentor. As a Gold Mentor, I work with elementary school students across the county to generate outstanding leaders. Working with these children, I realized that Prince George's County really stresses no bullying and zero tolerance throughout the early years in elementary school, sometimes in middle years in middle school. But when you get to high school, it is rarely stressed. You'll see posters, hear a speech in the beginning of the year, sometimes go to mediation, but where's the action? Where are the people that instead of just talking about it are out there preventing it? Where are the people that instead of hearing about a fight make sure there was never an issue in the first place? There's an old saying that says, actions speak louder than words. A group of 20-plus students in the latter part of 2010 decided to stop talking and to take action. So my question to you, the members of the Board of Education, is, are we still taking action or are we just speaking words? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cogman. Trezor Corbin?
Good evening. My name is Treasure Corbin, and I currently serve as the Oxnell High School Class of 2013 Vice President. As a student of Oxnell High School, I would first like to thank you for your support of the One Less Bully, One More Friend campaign. This initiative began when serious smut pages were created in schools around the county and posted on Facebook. These pages listed the names of various young females and made rude, hurtful, and demeaning remarks about them. These disgusting comments led to accusations and numerous fights in our school alone. This instance of cyberbullying led to a disrupted school climate, and as a direct result, one of our female classmates attempted suicide. In response to this near tragic event, a group of students at Oxnell High School came together and said, enough is enough. From there, the idea of the One Less Bully, One More Friend campaign was created in the hopes of bringing awareness to cyberbullying, physical, emotional, and verbal bullying. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Corbin. Crystal Arick?
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Crystal Irick, and I am the treasurer of the class of 2012. In the initial email we received from Ted Thompson, he simply asked for us to contact him regarding our campaign. In both of the calls between our sponsors and Mr. Thompson, we explained our program. In these calls, his primary concern was with our name, One Less Bully, One More Friend, because of his own trademark company, One Less Nemesis. One Less Nemesis is a t-shirt company started by Mr. Ted Thompson that makes and sells all types of t-shirts with designs based on rivalry relationships like snowboarders, skiers, and vampires. His desire to make money contrasts with the goal of our campaign, which is to educate and advocate on bullying. We use t-shirts to publicly show our dedication to the cause. The donations we receive from the t-shirts all will go to our Maryland State charity, the Special Olympics. We believe that because of the publicity we received, Mr. Thompson and his company felt threatened and decided to retaliate.
Thank you, Ms. Arick. Jolene Fisher. Terrence Odom.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Terrence Odom, and I currently serve as the president of the class of 2012 at Oxon Hill High School. Bullies are not cool, and when we stand together, we are a bigger, stronger force. Education, tolerance, and speaking out against bully behavior will put an end to it. This quote is an excerpt from a blog post posted by Ted Thompson, the owner of a t-shirt company called One Less Nemesis. My colleagues and I believe that this statement is a consolidated version of all of the information that we worked hard to put together in a brochure. Our mission statement declares that we are launching our campaign in order to raise awareness and educate the youth of Prince George's County. Was it a coincidence that Mr. Thompson mentioned education in his blog post? We don't think so. In our brochure, we also provide students with tips on what they can do to help put an end to bullying. One of those topics was speak up, don't become a bystander. When we saw that Mr. Thompson mentioned tolerance and speaking out, we couldn't help but notice that these points resembled the concepts of our ideas. When we first heard of the trademark issue with Mr. Thompson, we sought help from the board attorneys. They advised us to gather all the information that we had put together regarding our campaign. Thinking nothing of it, we did just that. Soon after sending our information off, we checked Mr. Thompson's site. To our surprise, there were many changes to it. We found out that One Less Nemesis was now launching their own bullying campaign called One Less Bullies Stand Together. This was not the case when Mr. Thompson sent us the original email addressing the problem. At first, he was simply selling t-shirts. Later, on March 24th, 2011, after we sent our brochure to him, and several months after our program had begun, his first blog post about anti-bullying was posted on onelessnemesis.com. The post contained even more of our ideas that were expressed in our brochure. We had been swindled out of our information that we put so much time into. After discovering this disturbing news, we started doing our own research. We checked the trademark registry and saw that while Mr. Thompson did have a trademark on the phrase one less, so did many other individuals. Could we really be shut down for having a program with completely different names and two different concepts? To us, that made no logical sense. Had we known this information before, we would have never sent our information to Mr. Thompson. Was this his strategy? To intimidate us for just enough time so that he can make it seem as if our programs were similar. We feel as though, with the proper guidance, we could have prevented this from happening to us. More could have been done to fight for something that was ultimately a positive endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Odom. Jada Nabinet. Jasmine Gillespie.
Good evening, Board of Education. My name is Jasmine Gillespie, and I'm the class of 2012 Vice President. I know you remember the one who called you names, the one who had you second-guessing yourself, taking alternative routes home, changing the way you dress, the one who filled you with fear, the one that caused your friends to turn their backs on you, the one that made you cry even if you won't admit it. I know you remember the one who hurt you and didn't care. I know you remember the one that saw it, the one that knew, the one that was all talk but no action, the one that did nothing, the one that did nothing. Oxon Hill High School did something. We started an initiative that challenged every individual that crossed its path to be one less bully, one more friend, with the hopes of raising awareness and educating the youth of Prince George's County about the harmful effects of bullying, and even have students pledge their commitment to lowering the county-wide bullying rate. Their vision was to instill knowledge, skills, and attitudes that will make this community a more peaceful place to live in. And it turns out we are not alone. The world was waiting for people to step up to the plate and do something about this bullying issue. So we stepped up, gaining national attention through newspapers, internet, and television. Victims of bullying, converted bullies, teachers, schools, and community groups contacted us sharing their stories, giving their advice, and inspiring us to keep the cause alive. One man should not be able to stop the progress of something that will make this county proud. One man shouldn't cause this program to contradict what it stands for by forcing us to bow down to nothing but a bully. We have proven the power of one. Now we challenge the board. Don't be a bystander waiting for someone else to solve the problem. You see it and you know it's wrong. Make one less bully by becoming one more friend to Oxon Hill, and do something so that we can continue changing our culture, one person at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillespie. Jessica Josie.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Josie, and I am a junior at Oxon Hill High School. The One Less Bully, One More Friend campaign has affected the lives of students in many ways. Our campaign has given students who were once scared to voice their opinion on being bullied reassurance that no one should be bullied into silence. You can't walk around the hallways of Oxon Hill High School without someone saying, "One less bully, one more friend." As we all know, for an incoming freshman, high school can be a scary place, and most bullying acts in high school start there. We try to reach out to those younger than us and become a friend that someone can talk to. This campaign has brought students of Oxon Hill together. Students have become more aware of what they say and do, which is a part of our mission. Last week, some members of the One Less Bully, One More Friend campaign taught a seminar on bullying at the iYouth Summit, a program that focuses on teenage topics such as alcohol and drug abuse, childhood obesity, and financial literacy. During that seminar, students opened up to us about their bullying experiences and how it affected them. One student told us how our campaign made him feel like for the first time ever, he was accepted. In reality, there are thousands of other students who feel the same way. This campaign is just a start to giving everyone else a sense of belonging. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Josie. Shavante Petty. Colleagues, that concludes the students who are listed on the board meeting for this evening. In accordance, the motion on the floor was students. Mr. Harris, I'm following the motion. Okay. Colleagues, that actually brings us to approval of the April 14, 2011 System Oversight Meeting minutes.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? It's been properly moved and second that the board approve the April 14, 2011 System Oversight Meeting minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Any abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. We'll now have a news break. It's entitled Weekend Backpack Meal Program.
Prince George's County Public Schools News Break.
I saw some cereal, and I saw some pears. You like pears? Oh, good. Well, let me give this to you.
In these difficult economic times, families can use all the help they can get. So back in November, when the Capital Area Food Bank offered bags of groceries to youngsters at Cool Spring Elementary School to take home for their weekend meals, it brought smiles a mile wide to those children and their parents. As current and former school board members passed out the free groceries, all part of the Backpack Weekend Meals program for children threatened by hunger, it was with a view to how full stomachs and attentive minds go together.
Families are struggling. They are struggling to feed their families, their children, 7 days a week. And this program gives them an expansion of what they're already doing, because we know that one of the most difficult times is, during the school day, the children get lunch and they get breakfast. But what happens on the weekend? How do we support? How can families give to their children? And this program does that.
I'm asking all the parents and anyone that's watching this to go in their cupboards and donate some food to the Washington Area Food Bank to replenish it in the name of Prince George's County, so that this program can be expanded, because there is a huge need here in the county for these backpack meals.
Research tells us that hungry children struggle more when it comes to learning. So we can all agree that well-fed, healthy children are always on task. They often retain information more easily in the classroom.
Through the generosity of the Capital Area Food Bank, 480 bags of food go home every Thursday or Friday to the families at 5 Prince George's schools: Langley Park McCormick, Ridgecrest, Dodge Park, Riverdale, and Cool Spring. And inside each bag of food are items chosen not for their bulk, but for their nutritional value. Foods like canned fruits packed in their own juices instead of heavy syrup, and low-sodium varieties of vegetables.
This week we have 2 boxes of cereal, again, one for Saturday and one for Sunday. We also include a variety of snack items. And then, like I mentioned, the meal to supplement the family. And this week, it's macaroni and cheese, beans, vegetables, and a canned fruit. And then once a month, we also include a recipe. And so today, we included a recipe on beans. And so these are basically just tips on ways that you can prepare beans.
With a team of volunteers packing the bags, including students who get community service hours for their assistance, the food bank is a dependable lifeline for those facing the specter of hunger. A dire situation that can befall anyone at any time.
Hunger has no face. Hunger does not discriminate. Right here in Prince George's County, there are more than 640,000 local area residents at risk of being hungry. 200,000 of them are children. Programs like these help many families.
Once we prepare the menu, the bags are packed every Saturday by volunteers. And this includes students. We do provide community service hours. This was something that you wanted to sign up for. You can go to our website, capitalareafoodbank.org.
The joyous faces of the kindergarten and first grade children at Cool Spring show that hunger can be conquered when community benefactors like the Capital Area Food Bank and caring school officials discover that filling a backpack with meals can be as important as filling it with books and homework. It's food for thought. If you'd like to help out as a volunteer or with a donation to the Capital Area Food Bank's backpack program, you can contact them at capitalareafoodbank.org or call them at 202-526-5344. For reporter Elisa Smith, this is Dave Zarin reporting for Telly Award-winning TV 96 on Comcast and 38 on Verizon.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Johnson and Ms. Waller, for your participation in that very needy program. Prince George's County Public Schools received the 2011 Distinguished Budget Presentation from the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States and Canada. Why is this significant? This award represents the highest rating given to government budget documents. Submissions are reviewed by 3 independent reviewers. Prince George's County Public Schools was rated proficient in all 4 areas: policy document, financial plan, operations guide, and communications device, as well as the 14 mandatory criteria within those categories. As a result of receiving this award, Prince George's County Public Schools Budget and Management Services Department will receive a certificate of recognition. Congratulations, Mr. Stansky. Dodge Park Elementary School Principal Dr. Judith White received the Washington Post Distinguished Educational Leadership Award during the ceremony and the reception at the Washington Post this evening. Dr. White was nominated by her school community and selected by a committee of her peers in Prince George's County Public Schools as the school system's nominee. Over her 6-year tenure, student achievement has steadily grown. Now more than 80% of her students are performing at proficient or advanced levels. Dedicated to her school community, Dr. White increases parent involvement through frequent communication provided in both English and Spanish. She invites parents to visit classrooms and participate in special events. She encourages teachers to make weekly direct communication with parents as a high priority. Ms. Jane Spence, the principal of Bowie High School, she was recently named the Maryland Association of Secondary School Principals as the state's High School Principal of the Year for 2011. Ms. Spence will represent Maryland and compete in the MetLife National Principal of the Year program, which recognizes outstanding middle and high school principals. Each and every year, the state selects 2 principals who are worthy of national recognition, one for middle and one for high school. From these winners, the finalists are selected and eligible to be named the National Principals of the Year. Congratulations to Ms. Spence. Each finalist will receive an award of $2,500 and a grant for special school project or professional development opportunities at their school. We are rooting for her. For our students, Forrestville Military Academy received the 2011 First Place Brigade Best of the Best Award. From April 29th to May 1st, the Black and Silver Knights Dream Team from Forrestville Military Academy will head to Daytona Beach, Florida. They could probably use that in this weather now. These students will once again represent Prince George's County Public Schools and participate in the JROTC Drill Team National Competition. 3 Prince George's County Public Schools will compete in the Destination Imagination Global Finals after qualifying at the regional and state competitions. Globals will be held at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and that will be from May 25th through the 28th. The teams will be advancing to global finalists as the Bulldogs from the Bond Mill Elementary School, the Flying Ostriches from Kenmore Middle School, and the juniors from Eleanor Roosevelt High School. For our teachers, Brian Weeks is a 6th grade mathematics teacher at Greenbelt Elementary School, has been selected to receive the Washington Post 2011 Agnes Meyer Outstanding Teacher Award for Prince George's County. The Agnes Meyer Award is presented annually to one teacher from each Washington Metropolitan School District. Mr. Weiss is a veteran teacher with 24 years experience and has been teaching at Greenbelt Elementary School for the past 9 years. The first school he taught at was Thomas Claggett Elementary School in 1987 as a Chapter 1 reading and math resource teacher. And although I'm sure Dr. Height will have additional comments to say about this, the Teacher of the Year for Prince George's County was named yesterday, and her name is Roshana Mbama for 2011-2012. Please join me in a moment of silence for the following. Nia Smith, a 3rd grade student at Brandywine Elementary School. James Turner, an 8th grade student at Walker Mill Middle School. Kyle Bennett, an 11th grade student at Bowie High School. And Ms. Lois Cottom, assistant principal at Bladensburg High School. Thank you for that moment of silence, and consider those in the families. We have the following upcoming meetings that I'd like to make you aware of. On May 16th, we have the budget work session at 5 p.m. On May 19th, we have a board meeting at 1 p.m. On May 23rd, we have a budget work session at 10 a.m. All persons interested in speaking, please register to speak 2.5 hours prior to the time of the meeting by calling 301-952-6115. I yield the floor to Dr. Height for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, good evening. This is the time of year when we recognize the many outstanding achievements of our students and staff. First, I would like to congratulate our new Prince George's County Teacher of the Year, referenced earlier by the board chair, Mrs. Roshana Bioma. Ms. Bioma is a special education teacher at Baden Elementary School and was nominated for the honor by her peers for her leadership, dedication, and tireless commitments to the students at Baden. I'd also like to recognize Shayna Sturkin, 3rd grade teacher at Spring Hill Lake Elementary, who was named the runner-up for the award, and there are 3 other finalists named as well. Mr. France Deachin from Bowie High School, Robin Draughter from Baden Elementary School, and Ashanti Foster from Ernest Everett Just Middle School. These teachers were honored last night and joined by 15 other nominees at the Newton White Mansion in Mitchellville during our annual Teacher of the Year reception. Ms. Bioma will go on to represent the county in a statewide competition for the Maryland Teacher of the Year, which will be announced by the Maryland State Department of Education during their gala event on October 14th. On behalf of the school system, I extend congratulations and best wishes to all our nominees, and especially to Ms. Bioma as she goes through the rigorous selection process for the Maryland Teacher of the Year this summer. Congratulations to the following 5 staff members who have been nominated to receive an Educators Serving the Community Award, also known as the EduCirc Award. Sherry Johnson, Educator Serving the Community Award to a teacher nominee. Melissa Vega, Educator Serving the Community Award to a teacher nominee. Sherry Johnson, Role Model Mentor Award to an individual nominee. William Blake, Role Model Mentor Award to a teacher nominee. Brad Weiner, Role Model Mentor Award to a teacher nominee. Sherry Johnson, Role Model Mentor Award to a teacher nominee. And Drusilla Saunders Falk, Educator Serving the Community Award to a counselor nominee. EduCirc is a national red carpet, black tie ceremony and fundraiser that honors the great educational achievements of individuals, educators, organizations, companies, and promotes a positive image for educators in our country. Students from Port Towns Elementary, William Wirt Middle, and Bladensburg High School also won prestigious education awards at the National Communication, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics Challenge, also known as CSTEM. The competition was held on April 16th at the George R. Brown Convention Center in Houston, Texas. Prince George's County Public Schools students joined over 70 schools and feeder pattern teams from Houston, Texas, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Detroit, Michigan, Cleveland, Mississippi, Memphis, and the Dominican Republic. The feeder programs from Prince George's County representing Bladensburg, Maryland, won the following awards. First place in sculpture competition, first place in mural competition, first place in GIS competition, and second place in green competition. In addition, there were several students, Mr. Tawu Akinyowe from William Wirt Middle School, and Elizabeth Osario, a senior at Bladensburg High School, who won the top middle school and high school ambassador award. This is the second year that Osario has won this award. Each student received a CSTEM blazer and a laptop. There are a number of upcoming events that celebrate the many outstanding achievements of our students. The annual Career and Technical Education Employer Luncheon will be held at Martin's Crosswinds in Greenbelt on May 3rd. This program recognizes students and business partners for excellence in the experiential learning program. The Special Olympics Spring Games will be held on May 5th at the Wayne K. Curry Sports and Learning Complex in Landover. And the community is invited to come out and cheer on these exceptional and inspirational student athletes. On May 6th, students in the career and technical education classes will celebrate the construction of the 36th student-built house project in Clinton, and will be honored with scholarships and gifts for their outstanding efforts in the CTE program. Each year, students in our CTE programs take part in the Student-Built House project, and each year, I'm so impressed with their work. The skills they are building in high school will give them a competitive edge as they go on to college and or careers. Congratulations to students, staff, and business partners of the CTE program for a job well done. The house is currently for sale. I think the asking price is $343,000. The house, if you're looking for a well-built house with high quality and a great community, this house is the one for you. And proceeds from the sale, by the way, will support the program next year. While we are recognizing excellence throughout our school system this month, please be sure to take a moment and recognize your child's teacher during National Teacher Appreciation Week from May 2nd through May 6th. I would like to extend my appreciation to all of our teachers in Prince George's County who are making a difference in the students' lives every day. In spite of our budgetary challenges that we face in our school district, our teachers continue to show and display their dedication and commitment to all of our students. We have several important dates coming up that parents need to be aware of. The deadline for students to apply for summer jobs in Prince George's County is tomorrow, April 29th. Registration for before and after care for next school year begins on May 2nd, and transfer requests for the 2011-2012 school year will end May 15th. Please visit the school system's website for more details. Also, early registration is still underway for pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, and before and after care for next school year. Students must be 4 years old on or before September 1 for pre-kindergarten and 5 years old on or before September 1 to register for kindergarten. Graduation season is almost here, as I'm sure many of our seniors from Oxon Hill are aware. Please visit the school system website for the 2011 graduation schedule. And as you make your plans for prom activities and graduation celebrations, we encourage you to remain safe and keep in mind and make a personal commitment to celebrate both drug and alcohol-free. You have put many years of hard work into your public school career, and we would like you to stay safe so you can pursue your college and career goals. Madam Chair, that concludes my comments, but I would like to take an opportunity, a moment of personal privilege, just to recognize the young people from Oxon Hill who spoke on the One Less campaign, particularly around student bullying. And I want to congratulate these young people, and I've met with them. And I also see in the audience Ms. Paula Brown, the SGA advisor. Thank you, Ms. Brown, for the work that you've done with respect to this group. We're trying to assist these young people as they are working on or with what we feel is a trademark issue. We're trying to help support the students. This notion of one less is unfortunately, or was unfortunately, a registered trademark. And we are trying to work with Ms. Brown and the other leaders at Oxon Hill to make adjustments so that this is not an infringement on the trademark that has already been registered. So I want to once again thank the young people. Your work has been very instrumental in reducing the incidence of bullying, not just at Oxon Hill High School, but across the county. So I congratulate and thank all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Hyde. I think that's commendable, and I would just add on behalf of the board that clearly we don't want a T-shirt to be lost in the message. And so I think the message that they're sending is what's most important, and they are to be commended absolutely for that work. Colleagues, that brings us to public participation on a budget agenda items. The first agenda item is 5.1, which is the state budget presentation. We have 2 registered speakers for that item. The first is Mr. David L. Khan, Citizens for an Elected Board, who will speak about that topic. Mr. Khan.
Thank you. But before I do, I'd like to add my applause to the students from Oxon Hill and their One Less program, regardless of copyrights and T-shirts and whatnot. And I hope that this will be replicated in other schools throughout the county. It is so important that children not be bullied, and it will lead to better discipline in the classrooms and in the halls and whatnot generally. So I don't know, we haven't had a chance to do this, but I want to applaud them. Now, about the budget. Mr. Lucci is going to be up here in a moment and do his usual fine job of telling us what happened in Annapolis, this time with respect to the budget. From reading in the newspapers, it looks like we've gotten quite a bit more money. I hope that's the case. Assuming that it is, back some weeks ago when the board was considering the budget, I know I stood up here and spoke about doing some advanced planning as to how you would deploy incremental amounts of additional money. And I know at least 2 board members did the same thing. So again, I don't know whether we're getting more, but assuming we are, I had hoped we would have had something now to give us an idea of how you might want to see that money spent. You mentioned, Madam Chair, that there was, I think, 2 public hearings. In order for the public to speak knowledgeably at those hearings, I hope at the next board meeting, which I think predates the first of those hearings, that there'll be some presentation, some idea as to how you intend to spend the additional money, and look forward to that so that the public has the maximum opportunity to respond. And although the ultimate decision is yours, certainly your judgment can be informed by the ideas of the community. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. And I would add that the meeting that I didn't include, which we'll get and announce that, is the Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting, which we already have had, and the superintendent made some recommendations already. So I expect that we'll hear more at that meeting as well. Our next registered speaker is Mr. Jacques Chevalier.
Well, good evening. Haven't seen y'all in a while, but nice to be here. My name is Jacques Chevalier, and tonight I faithfully need to handle some business for the budget and point out the outright deceit and chicanery perpetrated by the superintendent of PG schools and, to some extent, certain board members seeking to promote their private agenda. We, the people, demand fair treatment of all employees and students within the PG public school system. To date, since the arrival of the broad cultist fetchist, I think I pronounced that acronym correctly, long-time employees are being made scapegoats and fired solely because they aim to serve the masses as intended, and not for personal promotion. As we debate the budget and crunch the numbers, let us not forget about the lawsuits in the pipeline and the many to come by firing folk by way of so-called reduction in force and hiring cronies from the broad cult like that gal Reed from D.C. Hearing that the communications office is losing a female director of 11 years with 3 college degrees and a lot more experience replaced by a younger male for more money with lower level of education and minimum experience is criminal and frankly exhibits retaliation, discrimination, and cronyism favorable to the superintendent. To one, we the people deserve a quality TV station that we have grown accustomed to and witness the positive impact the award-winning programs have had on our children with mathematics and SAT prep instruction. The few school board members with any backbone must not outsource your leadership. Demand respect and procure accountability for the school system, TV, and its employees and the director, whom I've known for decades as one who serves the people. The TV programming as of late has had one too many commercials, promotions, self-serving comments about the superintendent. He's a nice guy, but when we allow the TV station of the black people of PG, since we make up most of the school system population, to become a self-serving engine and nonstop commercial for one person, this is cultish, people. The taxpayers must protest and wake up to the fact that this attempt to change the public persona and make this person larger than life is debris executed to make him look infallible, excuse me, I got a little cold, I'm not scared of you, to the not so educated amongst us parents who really own this school system. Stop playing games with the budget by bringing in folk from the outside as new employees, replacing the current dedicated great workers that have propelled the students to reach their potential every year. The people of this county and legislature and school board members must stand with the people and change the way this TV station has been operated. Retract the termination letters. Retract the termination letters sent to the communications employees and terminate the greedy newbies the boss is hiring from all over the country. Elected office holders can stop this budget discrimination and stand on the side of the people, or slash the budget where needed and not allow preferential malfeasance that will surely cost us in the end with lawsuits. Thank you very kindly. I'm Jacques, and I'm standing by every word. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chevalier. Mr. Lucci, if you would come forward with your presentation on the state budget presentation.
Thank you and good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Education. I'm not really sure how I can follow up on that, but I will try. You have in your packet a 2-page excerpt from what is called a 90-day report. 17 days ago, the General Assembly adjourned for the year, and A few days after that, the Department of Legislative Services produces its 90-day report. It's about 300 pages or more of fascinating material. I extracted for you the two most interesting pages as far as what we do, and it's on two sides. On one side, it says General Fund Budget Outlook. It has different columns, and it has the fiscal year that we're in, the fiscal year before, and the one that they just voted on beginning July 1st, as well as projections for the following 4 years after that. And I direct your attention to the row that says total revenues and fund balance. And you go all the way to the right where it says average annual change. They're projecting over the next 4 years that revenues will increase by about 3% a year, which is better than a couple years ago when revenues were decreasing, but it's 3% a year. Then go down to where below where it talks about spending, and down where it says total spending in the left column, and you follow it all the way over to the right, and it says 4.8%. So what this means is right now, according to all present laws, without any additional programs, but just cuts that are and increases that are programmed into the current state law for taxes and for programs, that spending will increase by about 4.8% a year, but revenues will only increase by about 3% a year. That's doing nothing else to change that. And of course, what does that mean? It means in the next column that has ending balance, the last four numbers in the last four columns are about $1 billion structural revenue shortfall. And so what I bring this great news to you on this beautiful afternoon is to tell you that the situation with the state in terms of trying to find new ways to shift state expenses onto the local boards of education, although we prevailed this year not having pension costs shifted to the county, the pressure will continue for the next 4 years because no family can have a 3% increase in salary and a 4.8% increase in expenses and expect to stay solvent. So sorry for that somber news, but hopefully things will rebound and the projections will change, but those are the projections as of right now. Turn the page over, and it's the Prince George's County specific page from the capital and operating budgets with regard to public education. And you see the school renovation and construction projects that are specifically in the budget. There may be more as a result of the Board of Public Works meeting next month. The last line is called unspecified additional funding. And this is the funding that came in the very last few hours of the Maryland General Assembly from a bill sponsored by Delegate Carolyn Howard, which dedicated the alcohol tax proceeds, many of them, to public school construction and renovation programs. So that's the extra $9 million, which has not been allocated by this board or the county council or the county executive, but it is out there for that. Finally, in the bottom, you have direct aid payments to the Prince George's County public schools. And we knew going into the session that we were going to be down about $20 million from the previous year based on the governor's budget proposal. And then the House of Delegates restored about $10 million of that by raising the per pupil expenditure, and then took away about $2 million of that to have the board pay a fee for the state administration of the pension program. And then through the alcohol tax, received another $4.4 million in operating funds. So that's generally, and so even though funds were restored, it did not get us back to where we were before the session started. The interesting part is how that breaks down by category. And of course, as you can see, foundation aid took the hardest hit, and compensatory education and limited English proficiency grants were actually increased. And so that's just a brief capstone of the budget numbers and how it finally ended after all the numbers are adjusted backward and forward and around to the House and the Senate and the Conference Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Lucci. As we go into discussion, I have Ms. Johnson. But before we go to Ms. Johnson, I think, too, in terms of the discussion with the public about how this all works out, it might be easy, I'm sure, Mr. Stansky, that we talked about starting out with a $155 million deficit, that we make it clear that it closes the gap of that deficit, but that we already cut so much prior to the beginning of the session, which is critical to our operations. Ms. Johnson?
Thank Thank you for relaying that information. Mr. Lucci, under the general fund budget outlook, under revenues, the opening fund balance, actual 210, working to 11, and then going on to 13, 14, 15, and 16, these are the estimated projections. We are, according to this, at 0 for 3 consecutive years for the opening fund balance for the state. So that means that, if I'm correct, everything will start from a position of 0 or less than 0, and then building or whatever needs to happen to get us to a balanced budget. What do you see with a projection of 3 consecutive years? What do you see that Prince George's will be facing if the state fund balance is being projected at 0 now? What happens if it falls even shorter than 0?
Well, these numbers are based upon all the decisions that have been made in the law as of April 11th of this month. I mean, no state can continue to get a AAA bond rating if it has a 0 fund balance, and so money will have to be allocated out of something else to be put into the rainy day fund. That being said, it is scary and somewhat unprecedented for the rainy day fund for the current, for the 2013 to be estimated at only $43 million. I mean, that by itself cannot stand either, and that's going to have to be replenished in order for the state to maintain its AAA. But those are just numbers based on decisions made as of this month.
And if you could speak to what looking at this is clearly a concern to me, now that we have reached the end of there is no more stimulus money coming into the state, we are spending the last of it right at this moment. If the projection is for 3 consecutive years of beginning balance of 0, and the stimulus, whatever it was supposed to do, because it plugged holes that were going to be created across this 2-year period. What I'm concerned about is the potential that those holes that got plugged is not permanent, because there was no revenue coming in or projected to come in to make that patch that was the stimulus money was used to fill it, pave it over so it didn't appear. And so what I'm looking at is the potential that is even worse than 0. Is that, am I looking at this reasonably?
I mean, you are. The hope was with the Recovery Act that after 2 years that things would go back to normal. Well, instead, I think what we're going to be experiencing is the new normal. I mean, this past week was announced on the stock market, the Standard & Poor's 500, that it was that all the numbers are back the highest it's been since before the recession started, and yet unemployment is still basically the same amount as it was, which means that the companies and the profits are not being invested in human capital. And so that whole new paradigm trickles its way down to this, where these projections are not getting any better.
And stabilized building of resources to rebuild people's lives, make them work at middle income type jobs, since that really didn't happen, I don't know how the superintendent and the board is going to be able, along with all the other jurisdictions in the state of Maryland, how we're supposed to look at this in terms of, are we planning to clear the deck of the Titanic? I don't know, but this is really troublesome. Really troublesome, because we have nothing to bail us out, and we're starting at 0, and the holes of the stimulus plugging, they're not going to last.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, and certainly at the federal level, everyone has said there will not be any more stimulus dollars forthcoming, no new Recovery Act to be enacted.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Lucci.
Next time I'll try and be a little cheerier. So. Thank you.
You're welcome. Colleagues, that brings us to item 6.1, Human Management Capital Initiative. We have one registered speaker to speak on that agenda item, Ms. Linda Langer. Please come forward.
I'm Linda Langer, Library Media Specialist at High Point High School and National Board Certified Teacher. According to the Superintendent's Human Capital Strategy, items critical to the success of schools, i.e. staffing, budget, interventions, supplemental resources, etc., all become a function of a more deliberate approach by schools regarding the use of their resources. In utilizing such a system, the hope is to involve principals more deeply in the important aspects of strategic planning, instructional programming, budgeting, staffing, and teacher development. The one area in a school designed to support all of these aspects is the school library media program and the certified school librarians assigned to the schools. The role of the school library media specialist in PGCPS is clearly defined in the process guide for the School Library Media Centers, A Balanced Approach. In addition to this role, many library media specialists are serving additional roles in the schools as technology liaisons, TAG coordinators, SchoolMax family portal coordinators, schedulers, and webmasters. The loss of human capital to our schools through the reduction in force of library media specialists will have an impact on all aspects of the superintendent's plan for reform and limit the delivery of materials and resources currently the responsibility of library media programs. We live in the information age, and because we do, information literacy has become universal currency, the single common denominator required for success in any stage of life. This is especially true for our children who, now more than ever, must be equipped to access, use, and evaluate information competently in both print and electronic formats. According to the profile of a graduate brochure, Prince George's County Public Schools is dedicated to providing students with the requisite interpersonal and academic skills to be successful in future higher education and career pursuits. Graduates will be able to 1, acquire important information skills. 2, make meaning of that content. 3, effectively transfer their learning to new situations both within school and beyond. Resource-rich school libraries and certified school librarians play key roles in promoting both information literacy and reading for information and inspiration. When staffed by qualified professionals trained to collaborate with teachers and engage students meaningfully with information that matters in the real world, school libraries become sophisticated 21st century learning environments that offer equal opportunities for achievement to all students. Could I finish the sentence?
You may finish your sentence.
Okay. Regardless of their social, economic, or education levels of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Langer. Colleagues, that concludes public comment on agenda item 6.1. And now I yield to Dr. Height for a presentation of item 6.1.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This presentation is about, although it is listed as Human Management Capital Initiative, it's actually a human capital reform. And our human capital reform work is really looking at two things. Number one, how do we build and develop the capacity of each individual in the organization so that they are best able to add value to the students that we serve in their education. And the second part of this is then how do we reconstruct our system and ourselves and our work to ensure that everyone is in support of schools, so that as a central office, as other offices that support schools, that we're all school-facing as opposed to schools facing us and just waiting for the word to come from central office. So one of the things that we want to share tonight is our whole process for human capital and how we intend to reform that work, which was really a major culture shift I think, in Prince George's County in terms of how we select individuals, how we retain them, how we develop and build their capacity, and how do we support what happens with those individuals, particularly at the schools, and how do we do that in a climate where our resources have been declining every year. So how are we able to sustain that work? So tonight we're going to hear a presentation from Mr. Doug Anthony out of our HR department. He will be assisted by Ms. Cynthia Schilling, and the two of them will be working through this presentation for the board. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Dr. Height. Madam Chair, distinguished members of the board, colleagues, friends, good evening. We'll go through this slide, but I appreciate Dr. Height's comments, which really help us begin our conversation around human capital. And quite often, human capital is synonymous with defining a set of skills, experiences, training that really looks at an employee's overall effectiveness and value to an organization. But I think, as Dr. Height indicated, it really for us means how do we look at building the capacity of each member of our organization, and how do we have that orientation towards schools that he mentioned. I also wanted to just give a little perspective about our office. Quite often, human resources is synonymous with human capital, and people say, well, what is that? What do you do? What are you responsible for? And so we really wanted to at least give you a picture of our mission as identified in our system, so that you get a sense of some of the work and what our charge truly is in a system. And I'm not going to read to you, but I do want to just illuminate the fact that we really take a very deliberate and intentional look at all of our practices, our policies, evaluation systems, and structures that we have in place, so we can be informed about how to make those things obviously better. But more importantly, how do we align those things and our resources to inform and impact the capacity building which we speak from. And in addition to that, we, of course, always support the Strive for 5 goals, and we have a particular emphasis on high student achievement, highly effective teaching, effective and efficient operations. Human capital reform, we know must be intentional. We have to have a very strategic way and deliberate way of looking at the work, being both thoughtful in the short term as well as having a long-term vision for what that work must look like. It requires a culture change that recognizes our performers, for our great performers, our outstanding employees in our system, and have the opportunity to grow those good performers, and then really figure out a system of how do we exit the low performers so we have the best and brightest in our system supporting all involved in educating our children. And then again, reorientating human resources and other central offices so that the work is understood, that everything that we do is connected to that impact of the children in the classroom. And so human capital reform is an arduous and could be very lofty, ambitious process, and so we need to be very intentional about what we're looking for first. And so we have 4 immediate goals of human capital reform. The first is really to look at how we're creating, sustaining a pipeline of highly effective teachers. We know that's critical to the success of our students. In doing so, we know that we have to have also a very viable pipeline, an ability to sustain highly effective leaders who in turn help support and build the capacity of those they're responsible for. Thirdly, we know that we have to create and sustain a growth-focused performance management system, which really looks at how do we do evaluations effectively, how do we tie that to building capacity through professional development. And then finally, we look at creating and sustaining effective and efficient processes and with support towards school performance. I'd like to defer to my boss, Cynthia. You want to speak to the full life cycle of our approach?
Sure. As you see on the screen, we've done a lot of work with the Gates Foundation, as you know, in the area of teacher evaluation reform. And one way that they've supported us is through some work with Betsy Ahrens, a human capital consultant. And she's really helped us work through that life cycle that you see up there. So we're addressing all of our goals in each of those areas. And as Doug goes through some of the extracts of the plan, you'll see some examples we're going to pull out for you in that life cycle of how we're going to specifically address some of those issues.
So that's just another visual. And we'll start with looking at 4 areas in particular to give you a sense of the work that's already started and work that we'll continue to do. And so we'll start first with an example of what hiring and selection looks like as a change from what it was. And so this is an example of something we're in the midst of right now, which is the principal selection process. And so we obviously want to be focused on matching the right leaders for the right schools and having enough information to be informed about the skill sets of those individuals that lead our schools. And so we developed a process based on our leadership standards, based on national standards, to develop a process that looks at more than just the personality of someone or just a one-time interview. We've actually developed a rigorous program where administrators, future aspiring principals, actually sit for a principal exercise where they have to analyze effective teaching practices and provide written feedback to a potential teacher to the video that they watched, identifying best practices and areas for advancing their work. We also have, as a component of that process, is to really have a understanding of how well someone can actually analyze a small series of vignettes and how they would go about problem solving and effective decision making. And so we've built this electronically as a process of one of the steps that future administrators have to go through to move to the next level. That's something we haven't done historically, and so it's something we're proud of that we continue to build into our selection and hiring process.
And I would also add at this point, one thing that Doug and I have learned a lot about through this process is what we can then take back from where the gaps are for the candidates that we're seeing, because we want to grow our own leaders. So we want to look back at our assistant principal experience and say, how can we better prepare the candidates that we're seeing through the assistant principal process and through teachers who are raising their hand and saying, I'd like to go into leadership, so that by the time they get to the principal selection process, we've also done our job of preparing them through professional development. So that's sort of how it circles back, and we use it internally to improve HR and PD practices as well.
And there's been a lot of feedback given to the individuals. So you don't go through the process and not know, what areas you need to grow on. And it's, again, building capacity so they're informed and given very specific feedback on those areas of growth so that, again, we're tying it back to each individual's growth specific to them. Strategic compensation reform, Cynthia?
So this is another one of those circles around the life cycle, and something that we've pulled out as a real need in the compensation and benefits area is the need for some strategic compensation reform, and I mean that system-wide. This isn't just focused on teachers and administrators, but looking at all of our compensation structures and thinking about how we incentivize placement where the needs are highest. So that could include conversations about matching the right people to the right schools, rewarding them for going to those schools and for staying at those schools and for seeing improvement in those schools. Obviously, all of our compensation is negotiated. We'll work with this or with our labor partners on this, but it's a discussion that we need to have, and this reduction in force, I think, has shown everyone that we need to think more strategically about our compensation structures and about where we're showing the value in our organization.
Valuation reform, as Ms. Schilling indicated, is really just paramount. It's tied to a lot of the work that we've currently done around evaluation reform in terms of really looking at how do we examine best practice? How do we examine, provide feedback and evidence for teachers in the classroom? And so we've spent a lot of times, thanks to the funding that we've had from the Gates Grant, to really start looking at the tools that we use to really examine our processes and to examine really just the overall approach to evaluation in the system. And so again, being able to really identify and recognize those great performers, to really help grow our good performers, and to really look at means for exiting low performers that are impacting our classrooms in particular. Another sample that we wanted to address or just kind of highlight is professional development. And for me, professional development is just extremely critical to building capacity. And how you do that for each individual in a system as large as ours, you have to be innovative. You have to think of different ways to communicate, to get information out there. And so we've utilized a lot of different technology that we've already had in the system. And one example is through webinars. And so we've trained all the teachers who are participating in our pilot teacher evaluation process, for example. We have face-to-face trainings with them, but given people's busy schedules and other things that impact their lives, of course, we provided opportunities for webinars where they actually get the same information provided through a different medium. We've also looked at visiting classrooms using a Polycom interface technology, where we've actually taken assistant principals into a classroom in a school electronically to observe a teacher's practice. But we were outside, we're outside of the system, so outside of that school building, we could actually sit down, critique, have a conversation around evidence of the practice that we saw. And so it's thinking about different ways to target and support people through the individual needs of their professional development and being able to provide a context and construct for giving that information and support to principals, to employees in a different way.
I would also add here that you have heard that we are a contender for a grant from the Wallace Foundation specifically on leadership development and building a pipeline of effective leaders, which is goal 2 of our human capital plan. And we're an attractive district to Wallace because we're just starting this work. We're just on the cusp of really tackling these issues. And I think one of the things that's most exciting in our grant proposal is tying the evaluation process to professional development so that at the end, the result of an evaluation is not just satisfactory or needs improvement or unsatisfactory, but tying those competencies that are measured by the evaluation tool directly to a professional development system that on an individual basis will let that individual address that gap or that lack of skills and let them build that competency so that the goal of the evaluation process is not just one conversation at the end of the year that is great or good or not so good, but really forms the future plan of that individual for what they need to do in the next evaluation cycle. And if we get the grant from the Wallace Foundation, there will be funding in there to support the electronic platform to build on our current Oracle program to link those two systems, the evaluation system and the professional development system. I do want to tell you that when I came into this role, even though I had been in the system, I hadn't really participated in the PMAP process. And coming into that in HR, one of our first metrics was the retention rate, and that we wanted it to be 100%. And what we've had a lot of discussion about is the fact that that's the wrong metric. We really want to know how many good performers we're retaining and how many good performers we're growing into great performers and retaining them. And that's the question that we should be asking and that we need to start measuring. And to my surprise, when we sat down and started talking about this last summer, when I said, okay, well, how many employees in each unit have we evaluated? The answer was, we don't know. We don't track that. We only track the unsatisfactory evaluations. We don't do anything with the good performers. We just kind of put those to the side. And so we want to really flip that ratio and talk more about the people who are doing well but need more support, and then what are we doing to really target those who we offer support to but then who cannot build that capacity so that we can put teachers in those classrooms who can meet those goals and have those skill sets. So I think it's just leading to a whole new conversation around performance management that links PD to it, and that's one of the most exciting parts of the Wallace Foundation grant. They'll be here next week for a site visit, and we should know sometime in May whether we've gotten those funds.
And so part of what we wanted to be able to share with you tonight was just to give you kind of an extract from the work that we've started and the work that we'll continue to do. And we provided just a couple of examples. We talked about building capacity through professional development, which Ms. Schilling alluded to, and being able to determine, what's left on the ground, what's the expected outcome when you're finished, what's the sustainability of this. And so with professional development, we're hoping that, of course, that has an impact on increased employee performance. And that the measures that we have, while they're not as quantitative as they will be, it's giving you an idea of the percentages of high performers that we have in the system. And so that's part of the work that we continue to do. We also realize that there's some things, as Ms. Schilling alluded to, that we don't have metrics in some areas because we've never had an opportunity to track certain things in our system. So it goes back to the mission of the Human Capital Management Department and really identifying where we don't even have tracking mechanisms or the infrastructure to look at things that we really should pay attention to. And so that speaks to that as well. I talked and gave the example of the principal exercise. And again, we're going through that process right now. And of course, at the end of this, we want to be able to have that opportunity to have a robust and powerful, viable pool of candidates that will be able to fill our anticipated vacancies. And looking at data and our trend data around how many vacancies do we have historically per year. And then being able to use a variety of resources and screening mechanisms to make sure we have the best and brightest in our schools. The second page just gives two more examples, again, around performance management reform and really looking at, we'll have a system, an evaluation system that really helps weigh out and help people build capacity, find ways to incentivize those who are doing great jobs and getting them looped back into supporting those that were growing that are good. And then, of course, Ms. Schilling talked already about the compensation structure. And the goal is to really pay attention to who we retain, why we're retaining them, and are they highly effective folks that we have in our system. And so, Ms. Schilling, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything at this point.
No, I don't think so. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. I think we really wanted to take this opportunity tonight to let you know that we're doing this work, that the plan is not complete. However, the work is not waiting for the plan. What we can do now, we're starting now, and then we build the plan around that because it is a long-term plan in many of these areas. So we're glad to take questions.
Thank you both for your presentation. The human capital strategy has been sort of on the radar for some time now, so we appreciate your presentation. I have Ms. Boston, Ms. Higgins, and Ms. Johnson.
First of all, I want to thank you for the presentation and all the work you put into it. I agree that we do need to revamp our evaluation process, and I'm glad to see that we are doing that. The one question that came to my mind was when we do and it may be a little bit off track, but it still rung a bell to me. When we do the selection of our principals for our schools, and I know we have a policy on that, is the public part of that final selection or part of that selection process? Because I've heard complaints from some parents that has not taken place when it comes to the selection of some of the principals that we have in our schools.
I'll be glad to address that, Ms. Boston. We do have an administrative procedure that we use for the selection of new principals. The policy suggests that we should get input from the community, and how we've done that in the past is actually use the public as a part of the interview process. That's not the way we're going to do that moving forward. The procedure has changed. What we're asking for now are profiles or characteristics of the individual that parents would like to see in their schools. We're doing the same with faculty members as well. And then we are making the decisions based on the selection, based on that information provided both from the public and from the staff members.
Well, yeah, what my colleagues asked me to ask this question is like, is it used the public, what is this, before the selection?
Yes, ma'am, we do. And so the new criteria actually allows for us to talk with the public before we make that final selection, just as we talk with the staff members before we will make a final selection.
So how are you going to make that announcement? I think because the public is used to having it done a certain way. So now that you're actually going to change that process, how are you going to get that information out to the public?
One of the things that we're doing already, where we have vacancies, and we're working now, currently, where we have vacancies for individuals that we're selecting, we're working with the PTSA the members of the PTSA, and getting to them exactly how that process will work. And that individual is helping us to communicate it to all of the other parents. We're also going to do a form of surveys for all other parents at the school as well, so that we're collecting information, not just from individuals on the PTSA, but any other parent who wants to give information about the characteristics or profile that they would like to see.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because we know that we don't have a PTSA in every school or a PTO, so there will be schools that have neither. So,
but we're making a contact as we have we have positions to fill.
Okay.
And if I could just add, Dr. Height, we're in the process right now, Ms. Boston, of contacting. Some schools have their FAC members of their faculty as well as points of contact for the larger community of the school. And so what we've done is, and this is part of that reorientation to support schools, we're actually having a member of my team along with the staffer for that school go out and share the information with the schools on the process for getting the information and feedback from the community at large. And we have different mediums of doing that. We have it both hard copies in different languages, as well as electronic way to get that information back. And so we're addressing that right now. They're scheduled, so I could show you even the schedule of the schools that are going to be met actually in the next 2 weeks.
It's great, because I would like to get, more information on how that process is taking place. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Boston. Ms. Higgins?
Thank you. You talk about the fact that we're eligible for a grant and that is something that we're hoping to be successful with. Could you talk about where we are in this process without the grant and what the difference the grant would make in terms of completing this?
Well, I will say that we're severely challenged without the grant funding, although Dr. Height and I and a number of other cabinet members have been working on seeking other external sources of funding from the community that might be able to support us. However, I will say much of the work inside of this plan is philosophical in terms of changing the way we think about things, and we're going to do that. The funding comes in for the tools to actually build the platform for the evaluation and PD system that we want. It's an upgrade to our current system, so we have some limited capacity, but we'd like to upgrade so that we can fully integrate those systems. And we also have we can change things like the principal selection process and look at compensation structures, but to actually make changes in compensation structures, that costs money. So some of this is short-term and immediate things we can change. I'll give you a good example in HR. Up until now, our staffing specialists have been really focused on, okay, a principal's going to call me when there's a vacancy, and then my job is to staff that vacancy. And really, a staffing specialist or a human capital partner should be doing much more for a principal. And I don't say this in any way to criticize the current hiring department, because that's the traditional personnel office model, and that's what they've been trained to follow. And they're now very excited about the prospect that we're asking them to be a partner to principals. You don't just respond when there's a vacancy posted. You're checking in with that principal on a regular basis about challenges they're facing with their staffs. Maybe they have a long-term absence that's impacting instruction and student achievement. We see that quite a bit in the PMAP process. We can help with that. Perhaps they're having a challenge with the performance of one of their staff members. We can walk them through the process and make sure that they have support from the central office to work through the evaluation process, whether it's the one we have on paper now or whether we're able to upgrade to the more snazzy version through Oracle. We can still do that work, whatever the process is. So there are some immediate changes we can make in terms of our philosophy and how we think about supporting schools, and then there are some of the nuts and bolts that we do need some funding for to make some of the technology and the data collection and the metrics more effective for us.
So you're talking about already beginning to implement this philosophically, or also on a concrete basis with current vacancies? And is that with the principal vacancies, or is that with vice principals, teachers? Where are you in that process?
So I think the philosophical change of perspective had to come first. So we spent the summer and fall of this past year working with our departments in HR to say, how can you change how you're supporting schools? So that came first and sort of laid the foundation, because I needed everyone in human resources, and specifically in Doug's office, to believe that this was valuable work and the work that we were supposed to be doing. So that has to come first. And then the concrete changes started to follow. The principal selection process, changing that, that was a concrete change that we're already implementing. We can implement in a concrete way, changing the way we think about the assistant principal role. If all you ever do is discipline, that's all you're ever going to learn. If all you ever do is building operations, that's all you're going to ever learn. So we can make that concrete change relatively quickly. It's the bigger, the compensation reform, that's going to take time to see concrete changes. The evaluation technology and data capturing that and the implementation of that, that will take some time. But we've always said from the beginning, from last August, essentially after we got through the reduction in force last year, I asked everybody to turn their attention to this and start thinking about immediate ways we could change the way HR specifically operates, because HR has always been seen as a barrier rather than a support. And so a principal would get a call from HR and say, oh no, what's happening now, instead of, oh, someone's here to help. And that was the first wave of change that we needed to get over, is that we're going to have a new reputation for human resources in Prince George's County Public Schools. We're going to actually be there to help. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it was the philosophical and then the immediate concrete steps, and then we have sort of the big work that is more long-term.
And one last question. It also sounds like the skill set in the principal selection process and what we're looking for and what we want to kind of develop within our own system is really kind of changing. And so I guess following up on Ms. Boston's comment, I'm assuming then that skill set also includes then community outreach and ability to kind of interact with the community as well.
Yes, it does. And so in the principal exercise that is in the first year that we're trying this year, we look to experts like Dr. Arbogast and the assistant superintendents for their definitions of the leadership standards that we're looking for. Mr. Anthony happens to have been a former principal, so he brings a lot of that experience with him. And then we build a skill set that definitely includes those kind of characteristics, the ability to relate to people, to communities, to bring people together. And what we have found very interesting in this process is that there were some people who did fantastic on the video where they had to observe instruction and then give feedback, and then they got in front of an interview panel and that relational skill set was not there. And so that gives us and them great information for when you come through next time. You don't have to work very much on the instructional leader component because you seem to have gotten that, but you need to work on that relational piece, because without both, you will not be the kind of leader that every school needs now. So again, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I guess I just want to make one comment. As a new board member who has gone out and made individual visits with each of the schools in my district, we have quality principals that are really incredibly talented and outstanding. And as somebody from the community who didn't know all those principals in such a close way, it's really inspiring. So good work.
Yeah, and I think our fear is when they leave, when those great leaders leave, who do we put there next? And we want to make sure that we are preparing our own through an effective process to be the people who replace them.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Ms. Johnson?
I'd like to talk about HR in a different way. Since, 1990s, we've gone from the word personnel, which has person in it, and we've adopted HR, and we use things like rubric, and we use things like metrics and capacity. All these words are fine. My concern is that HR, personnel, whatever, in PGCPS, first and foremost, we are going to have to rebrand. And I talk about this from having spent 35 years in this system through HR, looking at how it worked. And we, as first and foremost, I want to know, what are we doing to rebrand? And I use the example of a teacher who sent in information of upgrade of skill and was told for months and months and months, we never got it, it didn't come, therefore you don't get a raise, only to find behind the cabinet, covered in dust, lying there for 6 months. That is a real story. It is true, it is better. But until we eradicate some of this attitude, and we are constantly adding on top words and format and processes that fly in the face of the reality of what people have faced, we need to go to the basics. And so while I clearly see through Dr. Haidt and his vision about HR, of which I am in total agreement, I'm talking about on the ground. What are you doing to communicate personnel, HR, whatever you want to call it? How are you communicating? What is your plan that you will demonstrate to people that PGCPS gets it, they understand they are an employer of qualified, certified, whatever you want to call people who are driven by the fact they are part of student achievement. That is the message they need to understand. We need to make certain we don't acronym people to death. We need to use real language. We need to speak to people clearly so there is no equivocation about what you want for them as it relates to their evaluations, their hiring, or whatever. The other thing that I want to bring to your attention is that anyone coming to work for PGCPS, we want to hire them because they're qualified to be here, and we want to maintain them. What does it take to maintain a PGCPS employee, to value them and have them to value the system that works with them and for them? So I want some excitement, some energy in what I see and what I hear. Dr. Haidt's white paper of 60 some odd pages is fabulous. I want it translated into real. And we need to stop using these meetings and throwing out acronyms. There are people sitting out there and they're going, what are they talking about? What does it mean for putting a qualified individual in the cafeteria or in front of their children to teach math and science? How do we do that? And so it's not a criticism, it is a call to action that we need to stop talking over people, but enjoying people to understand the work that we do. And HR is critical in that. Thank you.
Thank you. I would love to just share that I agree 100% that we really have to have the level of passion and compassion for people in our system. And we have to let them know that the work that we're doing is only for one purpose. It's to really help children. And so my perspective is this. I'm an employee of Prince George's County for the last 18.7 months. I've only been in Prince George's County as a teacher, as a principal, as person in charge of professional development for administrators. And I can promise you that our goal has been, and we continue to do, is to really communicate with people and talk with them. I was struggling with the same process. I was like, well, we need to have a big message. We need to really get this communicated correctly. And someone reminded me that when you get the phone call from an employee says, hey, I appreciated the way I was treated today. Such and such, did a really nice job. We haven't had that before. It's starting to show the ebb and the tide changing slightly. I mean, in the process of really having people understand that it is relational. Human capital has the word human in it. That's why I like that term. And I think it really speaks to the whole idea of what you said, that we really have to rebrand and really help people identify that we're here to support schools. So I agree with your support, and trust me, I will have the energy and passion to continue to try to make that change in the work that I do.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Thank you for the presentation. We know, oh, did you have one? Did I miss the buzzer? Ms. Eubanks.
Really quick, it's more of a suggestion when you're talking about putting principals in new schools, and my colleague, brought up, which is true, that all schools don't have a PTSA or whatever, and you're talking about using teachers. Well, I have someone else that always tends to feel like they're left out, which is right in the community, which are the civic associations.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that that was on your radar. I didn't want it left out. That's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
All right.
you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Eubanks. That concludes board's questions on this topic. Thank you for the presentation again, and we know this is an ongoing conversation around human capital. Colleagues, that brings us to Dr. Height, unless you have any additional information you want to provide to the board on 6.1, that brings us to 7.0.
No, ma'am. I would like to move to budget consent agenda, and those are items 7.1 to 7.3, and then 7.5 to 7.20.
Okay, the budget consent agenda, was there a reason why you separated 1 to 3?
Yeah, because I
Oh, I
pulled,
see what you, yes.
I made a recommendation to pull 7.4.
That's correct. Oh, yeah.
That was
Okay.
probably an easier way to say that.
Thank you, Dr. Height. Colleagues, the items for our consideration are the budget consent agenda items, which is 7.1 through 3, and then 7.5 to 7.20. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept the budget consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Boston. Thank you, Mr. Burrows. It's been properly moved and second to approve the budget consent agenda as amended. All in favor? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. Thank you. Dr. Height?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as much as there are no non-consent agenda items, I will move us to item 9.0, governance unfinished business. And the first item is 9.1, establishment of the Excellence in Education Foundation for Prince George's County Public Schools. And with that, I'm going to yield to Karen Lynch, who will provide a brief overview of this.
Thank you, Dr. Height. Members of the board, the initiative that you have in front of you for consideration is an opportunity for the school system to create a 501c3 for purposes of raising funds for our students, for our schools, and for various educational programs. Previously, we had in our system a fundraising capacity of this kind in the form of a foundation that was called the Excellence in Education Foundation in Prince George's County. Over the years that that foundation was in existence, we declined in our use of the foundation, we declined in our fundraising activities. Most recently, we'd like to start that process again, and so this initiative is before you so that we can have the board's consent and approval, hopefully, to move forward with the creation of a foundation. Right now, for the most part, we are using our community foundation, which is the Prince George's County Community Foundation. The good number of our foundations that are working with the Prince George's County Public School System have requested a third-party entity for housing the dollars, and so it's for that reason that we will, of course, continue to work with the Prince George's County Community Foundation. This initiative, 9.1, is really intended to increase our capacity, increase our diversity in the types of fundraising efforts that we are going to engage in, and our goal is to, in fact, raise money. If there are any questions at all about this, I will do my very best to answer.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Ms. Johnson?
Ms. Lynch, at the National School Board Association conference just a few weeks ago, I specifically signed up for the work session, which was approximately a 5-hour session on school foundations. And I brought information back, and also a lot of that information is digitally on the National School Board Association website for this past conference. And the first thing that essentially the first presenter said, if you don't have a brand, your foundation is not going to run. And so, again, you've heard me mention this several times tonight, and you then create visually what that brand is. It'll be your logo, it'll go on your letterhead, it will go on your video, however you present. So that's what I'm looking for first and foremost. We know what the purpose of the foundation is, but given the constituencies of Prince George's County and what they can bring, from having looked at foundations throughout the country, I don't know of anyone that is more successful than the one for surrounding the Miami-Dade public school system. I think you know that. It is so phenomenal that they run a budget of special things for the school system that is almost equal to its state-provided budget, and it is all private funding. So I am very interested in this work. It is important, and I am hopeful that along with you and whomever it is that Dr. Height directs, that the names of the individuals that you will see on the website, and I actually have their business cards, and they have said they would be more than happy to have a very short-term meeting. It isn't going to cost us anything. And so I present that to you to help us, because they actually go around the country and assist school districts in creating or rebranding or re-energizing their foundations. And as I said, it was one of the longest sessions of NSBA, and actually the only one I was able to attend because I was sick for most of the rest of the conference, as you know. So I was very happy to do that. And let me give that information to you if you didn't get it in the big bag of stuff I sent to you. Okay. Well, we'll work on it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson.
Ms. Waller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to know more about the composition of the membership of the Excellence in Education Foundation. And you made the statement that the current Education Foundation, I believe, I guess we're doing away with it. Is that what I understand? Or
Not quite, Mrs. Waller. We are currently working with the Prince George's County Community Foundation. They receive and they invest the dollars that are given to us by large funders and foundations that would like us to have in existence a separate fundraising entity beyond our public school system. And so for the Dell grant that we have, for the Gates funding that we receive, that money is invested with, housed with, placed with our community foundation. We previously had a 501c3. Prince George's County Public School Systems previously had a 501c3, and it was called Excellence in Education Foundation, which is why in creating this foundation right now, we are using that same name. We're not picking a new name. We're using the same name, Excellence in Education Foundation, moving forward. So the initiative that's before you, 9.1, is really to initiate the process of establishing a 501c3 in Prince George's County Public Schools for the purposes of fundraising. And I would stress that this is an initial effort. The process is fairly lengthy. It certainly involves submitting applications with the federal government, with the state government, so you're not going to have this capacity immediately tomorrow, but this initiates the process.
And you all would decide who the composition of the foundation membership is? That would come from Dr. Height, or what input would the board have?
That would certainly be Dr. Height's decision. I think in the past, that was a decision that was made by the superintendent. I mean, that's...
Ms. Waller, the way it worked in the past was that the board would make nominations for individuals to serve on the board of directors for the Education in Excellence in Education Foundation. And I'm just trying to recall the previous process of how that worked. So the board would make those nominations, and then based on those nominations, we would select individuals to serve in that capacity as board of directors. But as Ms. Lynch stated, we would have to do a lot before we are at that point. This just initiates the process.
And I received an inquiry. Would there be representation of a board member or members on the as a part of the foundation? Like you said, this would come later. I mean, when you said later, are we talking 2 years from now? And this is to assist us in while we're in this budgetary constraint period?
This would be aside, so this would be for the purpose of fundraising. And right now, if we wanted the ability to fundraise, we would have to use some other party to do that, some other 501(c), because the community foundation is not equipped to do fundraising. They're only equipped to house money, but they're not equipped to do fundraising, and they're not designed to do that. And this would allow us to do fundraising around scholarships and for schools or for things that we want to help support the school system with.
Now, so we have that. So you also have your business advisory committee. Are they doing fundraising, or what are they? Are they just advising you on what to do with funds, or?
They don't do anything with respect to what to do with funds. So they don't offer any advice on that. What they offer are components around what they would like to see in terms of skills for students that they may hire. So they have businesses, they operate businesses, and we talk a lot about the skills necessary for students to come operate in those businesses. Sometimes we would think what would be unique or what would be attractive for businesses as we talk about things like a brand or things like a graduate profile or things like a message from the system. From the business perspective, what are some things that you would advise us to include in that message? That's the type of partnership that we have with the business advisory. That's not a fundraising arm, but it does not prevent us from requesting from them donations, if you will.
Now, I understand that the county, of course, has our summer youth employment program. Are these business advisory committee members involved? Are they being encouraged to participate with the county agency that's dealing with hiring our employees for the summer?
Just because I know some of the businesses that are associated, some are and some are not.
Certainly, I've had several conversations, and I am concerned about the lack of employment act options for our students this summer. And I would certainly, with your leadership, like to encourage you to ask these persons to become active and take an active role with the county in employing our students this summer. I understand that there's discussion going on, but the number of employees is down, and I believe that this is a team effort between this business advisory committee that you have. These are business partners that you're working with, and what the efforts are doing with the county, and that we know that the county has been involved with the activities of the board and what the schools are doing, and certainly with what our students are their activities also. So I would strongly encourage involvement, and I would like to know the follow-up on what is being done in this regard. Thank you.
Mrs. Weller, I might add that actually the chair of the business advisory last summer and this summer as well has already indicated that for his Green Jobs program, he's going to hire several students, and he's coming solely to the public school system in order to recruit. So I think it's probably about 20 or so young people that will be employed.
I think that's great, and so my point is that, and we've mentioned this in several times, you know, a lot of times we go things along, we go by ourselves. I think this is an opportunity that we have in which we can work with the county. We may not have the personnel, and I know we're being stretched thin, but I certainly would like to encourage us to work with the county agency that's doing that. That's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waller. Ms. Higgins?
Yes, Ms. Lynch, there used to be another foundation or a different foundation for the Prince George's County Public Schools. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is that dormant or is that out of existence?
It was abolished. It was abolished several years ago, yes.
Okay, so this is to really use that option in a different kind of way and in some similar ways.
In a very similar way to what we previously did. It was abolished. We are again creating a foundation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Ms. Beck?
I'm piggybacking on Ms. Higgins' question. As I recall, it was abolished because the staff person that was coordinating it couldn't raise enough money to pay for the salary. There has to be a break-even point to where you're fundraising and bringing money in, but you're not losing money by the employee that's charged with managing the program. I believe that was, let me just pick a number out of the air. We hire someone to manage the foundation for $50,000 a year, and they're the manager of the whole program. But we only bring in $30,000 a year. So at that point, the school system would be losing money in that, and I think that was why after a series of years, the school system couldn't continue funding a program that wasn't making enough money for the staff person.
You're absolutely right. We don't want to run at a deficit during this time. My understanding is that part of the reason that the previous foundation was in fact shut down and eliminated was because we stopped really an active fundraising effort. And so, you know, previously we had the 5K run, we had several other initiatives, but slowly but surely we stopped that engagement. And so what's really absolutely important has been pointed out is revving up, becoming more robust about our fundraising, certainly branding, certainly developing good community engagement. But it is not our goal to run at a deficit.
So do we have something in place so that we'll see that the funds coming in are surpassing the funds going to the person managing the project?
The process of establishing such a fund requires reporting, annual reporting to the federal government, annual reporting to the state. There's a constant ongoing budgeting process that's engaged. So you will see ongoing the revenue that's coming in and the expenses that are associated with the 501c3.
Ms. Hathaway Beck, we also do not have any FTEs associated with the development of this. So there's no requirement to hire a person to manage this. This would be a place that if we wanted to, using the example that Ms. Lynch provided, if we wanted to do a 5K run, then we would have the ability to absorb the funds associated with that in this account. It would not be an individual, it's not an individual who is slated to manage that as a separate FTE.
So who would coordinate the 5K run?
That's actually coming out of, well, I'm using that, I just use that hypothetically. In the past, I think that was coordinated through a couple of agencies, generally, a couple of departments. Curriculum and instruction did some of that, as well as the budget in terms of the collection of those funds. And I think there are opportunities to continue to do that because we get asked all the time about the ability to fundraise or to do a fundraiser. But as I indicated before, the Community Foundation just doesn't provide us with the option.
Right. I'm really on board with this. I just don't want to be running a deficit or having to hire someone or use staff that are already short in both of those departments to run a fundraiser that doesn't really generate enough for the amount of work that's into it. I know that sometimes there are grants that come through that have to go into this type of an environment in order to get into a school. And I know if we don't have that, then we'll lose the ability to access those funds. I just hearkened back to those years when we weren't raising enough to pay for the salary of the person doing it. That's what I want to stay away from.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. And Dr. Hyde, I think as we close this out, I'll entertain a motion. I just wanted to add, I have some concerns, but I think if we have the, I'm more concerned about reporting requirements, that be really included in the process so that it's regular reporting. And it looked like sometimes when we have the community, with the other foundation, we were kind of like into the mix of 6 months or 7 months and say how much money we got in there, what is it being used for, those kinds of things. And also setting the specific criteria as to how, once the fundraising is done, then how is it used for the educational program purposes. Okay, with that, colleagues, I entertain a motion. There is one.
Move to accept.
Thank you, Ms. Beck. Thank you, Mr. Armwood. It's been properly moved and second that we accept governance unfinished business item 9.1. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Thompson, call the roll, please.
Mr. Armwood? Aye. Ms. Boston?
Aye.
Mr. Barrows?
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins? Ms. Johnson? Ms. Waller? Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Beck?
Aye.
Mrs. Jacobs?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is item 9.2, and that is the Board of Education 2011-2012 meeting calendar.
Thank you, Dr. Height. Colleagues, this is standard. We have our board calendar up for approval each year. Ms. Johnson?
Just very briefly, Dr. Hyde, at the last meeting on the first reader, I asked or presented to you some considerations as we look at the 213-214 calendar, and I would at some point like to have you tell us whether some of those ideas have some resonance and we can begin looking at particularly the staff development pieces for our teachers and all of our staff people, as we use the calendar not built around long weekends, but rather around production for making it better.
Yes, ma'am. I think you were talking about the district calendar, and we are already putting those processes in place. And the trick to that is really to begin early in that process for the following year. But I think this references the Board of Education calendar, your meeting calendar. Is this? This is your meeting calendar.
Okay, I was thinking that we were looking at the 211. I know we approved that, but it caused me to remember that we need some feedback on that because of the numbers of days, and if we ever begin to think about expanding the time that children have in school, we have to begin somewhere.
Move to accept.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and second that we accept the Board of Education calendar, which is 2011-2012. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Thank you. Motion passed, colleagues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next items under 10.0 are new business first reader items, and there are items 10.1, 10.2, 10.6, and 10.7.
Thank you, Dr. Height. The chair recognizes Mr. Armwood for item 10.1.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion that we table the renaming of Charles River Flowers High School auditorium at this time. Ms. Jones is unable to retire now, and I would like to table this until we get a date for her final retirement.
Thank you, Mr. Armwood. Colleagues, the motion on the floor is to table item 10.1 based on getting a definitive date of retirement for the proposed recipient and renaming of the Charles River Flower High School auditorium. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Harris and Ms. Waller. It's been properly moved and second that item 10.1 be tabled. Ms. Harrison, just for clarity, there is no discussion. Do we need a supermajority on this on the table?
Take a vote either.
Okay, just want to make sure. Ms. Thompson, call the roll, please.
Mr. Armwood?
Aye.
Ms. Boston?
Yes.
Mr. Barrows?
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Waller?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Mrs. Beck?
Aye.
Mrs. Jacobs?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Colleagues, we have 10.2, 6, and 7 for consideration as first readers. Is there a motion?
Move to accept.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Burrows. It's been properly moved and second that these items be accepted as first readers. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? Seeing none, motion passed. Thank you very much. Colleagues, we have registered speakers for non-agenda items. We do. I'm just going through here because I have a change since we had students go first. Okay, colleagues, for non-agenda items, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 speakers. To the public, for non-agenda items, you've been registered to speak in a public comment forum where the Board of Education will listen to your comments. We will not necessarily address your comments. We are here to hear from you, except for the fact that we may have Dr. Height have staff address whatever issues are raised at the time. You have 3 minutes to make your presentation. You may complete the sentence that you are on when you hear the buzzer. You may not relinquish your time to any registered or unregistered speaker. Please use titles rather than names. Please do not use profanity. And if you have a copy of your statement, please feel free to leave that with Mr. Coleman. The first person on our list for non-agenda items is Paulette Brown, SGA Advisor, Oxon Hill High School Bullying Campaign. Welcome, Ms. Brown.
I think my allergies are kicking up. Dr. Height and board members, my name is Paulette Brown, and I am the SGA advisor at Oxon Hill High School. Martin Luther King once said, "I have a dream." His dream was to unify our nations through peace. These SGA students also have a dream. That dream is to bring together their peers by eliminating bullying. Their dream has been robbed and pushed aside. It hurts to see their hard work, it hurts to see their hard work go to waste. Students come to school every day eager to learn and to make a difference at their school. They cannot make this difference alone. They need your help. We need your support. I would like to read a message to you. Good morning, Mrs. Brown. I saw the piece on Fox 5 this AM. Thank you. It feels good to know that your program is helping the whole school. Thank you for caring about us. And that was from March 10th. I share this message with you because I met with this parent after her daughter attempted suicide. I share this message with you because, honestly, the parent was actually a former student of mine at John Hanson High School and also at Oxon Hill High School. The student's name and picture was posted on the Smut page, Facebook, as other students have shared with you this evening. It would be a shame if this campaign ended, because you never know who you may help. From time to time, people are bullied in life. How ironic is it that attempting to help others with the One Less Bully, One More Friend campaign, that we too have been bullied. We have been bullied by the legal term cease and desist. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Teresa Petty.
Hi, my daughter attends Oxon Hill High School, and I saw that piece that was just referred to, and I was offended when I saw it because the teachers and administration at Oxon Hill High School have bullied my daughter, and the lady that just spoke is one of the people who has done that. And so I was offended when I saw that part. They say that the students bully each other, but at Oxon Hill High School, the teachers and the principal bully the kids. And I'm upset about that. And I received a phone call recently from the deputy superintendent. We're supposed to be trying to rectify some of the problems that I've had with my daughter. I've been asking you all for help for a whole year. So I'm hoping that I will be able to meet with Dr. Height. I've sent so many emails, nobody will respond. And I'm told that you all want to help. 3 weeks before school now, people want to help me. I've been crying all year. My daughter has been harassed even by the lady who just spoke. My daughter made a group, a models team. Made it, but because they don't like me, she doesn't like me either. They didn't put my daughter in a group and said that my daughter didn't make the team. My daughter was on the team for 2 years and ended up on 106 in Park. That hurt me. My daughter has severe allergies. She's been mistreated at Oxon Hill High School. The principal has allowed the teachers to falsify her grades. I've asked you all for help. I've sent you email. I have proof that no one will look at. I have proof that they lost my daughter's 180 community hours. I had to replace them. They falsified her grades and changed them. The principal put documentation in her files that nor myself nor her counselor knew about. And when the counselor began to help me, guess what they did to the counselor? They did not bring her lunch and brought everybody else lunch to tell her that you're an advocate of Miss Petty's. We don't like that. So it's funny to me that the lady can stand and speak about one child. What about my daughter? Because you definitely mistreated my daughter, and called me on the phone and put me on speakerphone, the lady who just spoke at Oxon Hill High School, and tried to demoralize my child, and I told the principal. So it's funny, you can't always, what do you say? You can't judge a book by its cover. That speech sounded good, but I'm a parent who knows her personally, and that was just words. Show some action. I want somebody to help my daughter. My daughter's a scholar. If you look at my daughter's grades from the kindergarten till now, people want me to feel like they're doing me a favor. Like I came last time y'all spoke, and I spoke to you about a lady who was rude to my daughter and disrespected us at a meeting where she was supposed to help us, and told my daughter, I'm handing you a diploma. I'm doing you a favor. Lady, my daughter was getting A's before we knew you were on the earth. Don't do that. I've done a wonderful job, and I love my daughter, and I'm hurt. And I am offended by that, because if I hadn't gotten up here and spoken, you would have thought, so because my daughter didn't want to kill herself, it doesn't matter that she's hurt and she's sick and she's disabled and she has severe allergies, and I'm running back and forth to the school now. The principal has said, Ms. Petty, we need you to give us 48 hours before you come. I do security. I have a secret clearance. Why is it that I have to give you 48 hours because I reported that you falsified my daughter's documents? I want you all to do an investigation on this lady here and on the principal at Oxon Hill High School. I have my record.
Dr. Hay, did you close in?
I did, Madam Chair, thank you. I just want to inform the board that staff, including myself, the staff at Oxon Hill, the principal, and many of my staff members have spent considerable time with Ms. Petty dealing with this situation. We continue to work with Ms. Petty to attempt to resolve this situation, and we will and are open to talking with her. As she mentioned, she's been working with Dr. Coleman-Potter, the deputy superintendent, and other staff members as well. So just wanted the board to have that information.
Thank you, Dr. Height. Ms. Debbie Wood.
As a teacher in resident, it has always been a source of pride that our county addresses the needs of all students. We offer advanced placement courses, the Summit program, as well as foreign language, science and technology, performing arts, and tag magnet schools. We do much for the children at the upper end of the learning curve. But we all know that some of our students are needy. They must be provided with a basic foundation in the early years in order to be successful. Research states that children who have reading difficulties early are likely to have reading and writing difficulties throughout schooling and for the rest of their lives. This is called the Matthew effect. To address this need, Reading Recovery was implemented. Reading Recovery is a safety net for struggling readers and writers in 113 of our elementary schools. Many programs have been hit by this budget shortfall, but only Reading Recovery has been eliminated completely from the budget. Yes, it's an expensive program, but so is retention, special education, and high school repetition and incarceration. Since Reading Recovery's elimination was announced, you have heard from classroom teachers, Reading Recovery teachers, former and current Reading Recovery students and parents, all speaking of the benefits of this program. Reading Recovery has demonstrated that the learning path can change for these children. It works. I want you to imagine what this school system will look like without Reading Recovery. The number of below grade level children will increase year after year after year. In about 4 years, test scores will decrease because the below grade level readers will reach the testing grades, and parents will look for other educational opportunities for their children. Frustrated children will be going to the health room and acting up. Children will learn to be learning disabled, and special education costs will rise, and transportation costs for transporting children to alternative schools. More students will be retained in kindergarten and first grade because many kindergarten students are promoted because of the accessibility of Reading Recovery. It is the obligation of the school system to teach all children. Why has there been little or no talk of using additional funds for Reading Recovery? We know that Title I funding is not the answer for all children in our school system, if it happens at all. What about the children at the low end of the learning curve? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Sonia Parr? Sonia Parr. Robin Baudouin. Seems like I call it different every time you come up.
Good evening. My name is Robin Baudouin. I am a Reading Recovery teacher. I thought very hard about whether or not to speak tonight. I feel as if we have already said it all. We have spoken about the research that supports Reading Recovery, the small window of time in which learning occurs, and the cost-effectiveness of the program. There has been a plethora of phone calls, letters, and pleas from parents, administrators, and teachers. I thought, why would I come again? The answer is this. My father, who has recently passed away, taught me never to give up on what I believe in. That is why I'm here tonight. I believe in the right of every student to be able to read. I believe in the importance of putting children first and leaving no child behind. I'm a teacher of 21 years in Prince George's County and a mother of a 7-year-old. I am here today to give a voice to the 1,000 children per year who may never learn to read. Although well-intended, it is naive to believe that somehow these children will be able to get something from nothing. I implore the board to reconsider the ripple effect of cutting Reading Recovery from next year's budget. There will be no second chance. The expertise that my colleagues and I have in the field of emergent literacy is astounding. I can tell you with certainty that of the 200-plus students I have taught through Read and Recovery, I have not taught any of these students the exact same way, because each is unique. Very rarely are reading difficulties caused solely by lack of exposure. If that were the case, then those children could be taught in the classroom with good instruction. The children we see have multiple issues so complex that only a highly trained individual can diagnose and unlock the confusion in less than 20 weeks. Paraprofessionals and computer programs may enhance a child's learning once they have mastered reading, but there is no way that either has the training to even begin to diagnose reading issues and implement a reading program that can teach the most complex and important skill anyone will ever learn. Consider this scenario. If your child needed brain surgery, would you want the neurosurgeon to perform the surgery, or would you allow the technician who takes your blood to do the surgery? Although the technician may have good intentions, their lack of formal training and intense professional development would put your child at risk. I will not stop fighting for the children in Prince George's County Public Schools and their right to learn to read. Please join me in this effort and find another way to save money and still put literacy and children first. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, that concludes public comment on non-agenda items for this evening. And the time is approximately 9:34, and we must return to executive session. Yay. There were no follow-up items. Dr. Height, do you have anything for the good of the order as we? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the board's public meeting. We will return to executive session.